Hello and welcome to Radical Living. I'm your host, Shoeless Joe, and today we are talking about cutting your losses. There's this thing called the sunk cost fallacy that we're all guilty of. A fallacy is a way of thinking that might seem logical at the time, but really it's not logical at all, so we should really just stop doing it. The sunk cost fallacy states that just because you've already put a bunch of time or money into something doesn't mean it's automatically worth putting more time and money into it. This is kind of a hard thing for us to do because once we've already invested in something, we feel like we have a certain ownership and connection to it. So we don't want to just let it go because we've already put all this money and time into it. But the thing about that time and money is that those are sunk costs. We've already spent the time, we've already spent the money, and we can't get that money and time back. Let's say you bought a concert ticket to a band that you sort of like, but they're not your favorite. But then a bunch of your friends are doing this super awesome thing. It's like your favorite thing to do. They're going out mudsliding, or I don't know, whatever it is you like to do, they're doing it. So you're faced with this decision. On one hand, you really would rather go with your friends and do what they're doing. But on the other hand, you already spent the money on the ticket for the concert. Many people would feel obligated to go to the concert. They would just tell their friends, I'm sorry I can't go, but I already bought this ticket, you see? Here's the problem with that way of thinking. The money for the ticket is already gone. It's a sunk cost. Either way, you're never getting that $100 or whatever it was back. It's gone. Vamos. Poof. So what you need to do now is decide which thing would I rather do? Go out with my friends to this super awesome thing or go to a concert that I kind of sort of like? This is just a sunk cost and you should cut your losses and go hang out with your friends. Or what if you're reading a book? You started this book, it was supposed to be really good, but once you get into it, you realize you're not that into it. You're like 3/4 of the way through, so now that you've invested so much time in it, you can't stop reading it now, right? Wrong! How much time you put into reading the book is another sunk cost. That time is gone. You're never going to get those hours back. So what you need to do now is decide, is it worth continuing to read? Am I going to get enjoyment or any kind of edification out of continuing reading this book? And if you're not, then stop reading the book. This is one that I used to be so guilty of. And I didn't even do it just with like a book. I would do it with like a series. Like I'd be 5 books into a series and just be like not really into it. But I've already gotten so far in the series. I have to keep reading every book, right? You don't. Cut your losses. Just stop. There's only so much time on this earth and there's only so much money in your pocket. If you start watching a movie and it's just boring or offensive or uninteresting, just stop watching. You spent all this time and money building model airplanes that you don't care about anymore, but you feel obligated to keep doing it. Don't. Just stop. It's okay to move on. Let's say you're in college and you're like a 3rd or 4th year student and you suddenly realize that you don't want to do what you've been studying for the rest of your life. What are you going to do? What are you gonna do? It's important to recognize, even if you've spent years and thousands of dollars on something, those are still sunk costs. You can still cut those losses and move forward, move towards a direction that you feel compelled towards, that you feel passionate about. Maybe you've been in a job for years. You've invested not just time, but relationships. You have emotions invested. You know your coworkers. Maybe you like them a lot, but there's something inside of you nagging that there's more for you elsewhere. This isn't the place for you. You can always keep in contact with previous coworkers and you will always make new friends in new places of work. Another big sunk cost is where you live. Just because you've always lived somewhere doesn't mean you always have to. You should be able to take a step back and think, is this the best place for me and my family? Is this where we should be living? Or is there somewhere else that we would thrive so much more? I think that the sunk cost fallacy is the reason why so many of us just do the status quo in every way of our lives, day after day. It's the reason we don't question hardly anything, because it's always been that way. We've invested our entire lives to live the way we've always lived. We don't want our whole lives to be a big waste, do we? Maybe not, but I would ask you, do you want your whole future to be a waste too? I have spent countless thousands of dollars on tons of things that I now realize I never needed, and I have since given them away, thrown them away, or sold them for much less than my original purchase price. Because I realized that all of these things were sunk costs, and I desperately needed to cut my losses and free myself. So I ask you, what in your life are you holding on to that's a sunk cost that you need to let go? Look for ways that you can cut your losses and move forward. Because time and money spent are time and money gone. But the future holds untapped potential that only you can steer in the right direction. Thank you so much for watching. Remember, keep it simple, question everything, and stay radical.
Cut the cord. Just leave it all behind. Just leave it all behind. Just leave it all behind.